Hi, my name is David Day of D-Day Photo Art, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about the lighting techniques that I used in my original video on wire ICM photography. A lot of people have written me and said, David, I'm just not getting the results that you are, and very often that is a consequence of lighting, and people have had a lot of questions about lighting. So we're going to cover that in detail in this short video here today, and hopefully it will give you some ideas to overcome some of the difficulties that some of you have been having in lighting your wire ICM scenes. One of the things that I want to correct from the original wire ICM photography video is the wattage of the lamp that I'm using. I believe I said in that video that I was using a 25 watt lamp. However, that wasn't correct. At that point in time I was using a 5 watt lamp. A lot of people ask where I get my lights from. Well, I have gotten them from Amazon. I have this light right here that I got from Amazon. It is a desktop photography light, and I'm no longer using that one, and I'll explain why in a minute. Where I get most of my lamps that I experiment with today is from the local thrift stores. For instance, this is one that I'm using right now, and I got 2 of these for $1, which is really great. Now, there are a couple of criteria that I look for whenever I'm buying lights, and this is one of the reasons why I don't use this lamp that was built just for photography right now. Although it's a very good light, it's about 7.5 watts. It's an incandescent lamp, and it will get very warm in a short period of time. And there's even a warning label on here that says, please turn off the light after use. Do not turn the light on for more than 1 hour. And the reason is it gets very hot. And the last thing we want to do when we're playing with tissue paper, plastic bags, and that sort of thing, which is combustible, is create a fire in our studio. So the first thing I look for is a light that's an LED lit light right now. And this one right here is I believe it's a 5 watt lamp or somewhere along that line. And the second criteria I look for is I look for something that's got a little bit of depth or a cone around the light. This is almost ideal, and I'll explain why in just a second. And compare that to something like this, which I really can't use because it's got a very narrow housing on it for the light, and as a consequence I can't focus that light as well. It creates a very wide light that tends to illuminate everything around the wire, and what we want to do is we want to concentrate that light so it's illuminating the wire, and that is it. So one of the things that I did relative to this is I originally created a cone, and this is on the old light that I was using right here. I created a focusing cone out of cardboard, and then wrapped electrical tape around it to hold it in place. Now what I want to do, if you're going to go that route, is you want to create something that's going to have a little aperture on the end of it, and what that will tend to do is that will tend to focus the light on the wire, and it won't allow it to diffuse around the wire, which tends to create a more subdued, less focused scene. Now this is one that of course I created with the cardboard and electrical tape, but if you know somebody who is a weaver, you can get these little cardboard bobbins from them, and this originally had a lot of fabric on it, and my neighbor gave this to me. And all I do with that is fit it right around the light like that, and it blocks all of this side lighting from it, so you get a more focused light with a smaller aperture. So that tends to work very well for this purpose. The other thing that I look for in these lights is something that is flexible, because you would be amazed at how if you change the position of the light relative to the wire just a little bit, how you can get a very dramatically different result. So having that ability in an arm that is bendable is very good. So that about covers what I'm looking for in lights. And again, 2.5 watts, 5 watts is 7 watts is just about maximum. This is about a 3 watt light right here, which tends to be perfect for what I am doing. And I'll show you in just a little bit how I adapted it to my studio. Before we go over into the studio, let's talk just a little bit about some of the things that I've seen on images that people have sent me when they've attempted to make ICM photographs of wire. One of the things that I have noticed is that people very often tend to go overboard with the wire in their photograph and end up including a whole heck of a lot of wire in the photograph, and it gets really confusing whenever you make the photograph of that wire because you're moving the camera against that and you end up painting this jumble across the entire scene. So one of the things I recommend is to keep that wire as simple as possible whenever you're doing your photograph, and that simplicity is what you're looking for that creates a very good scene. The other thing is, as I mentioned before, with this focused lighting, is a very small change in the lighting will create a dramatic difference. And what you want to do is have the wire both in a lighted situation and in a shadowed situation, and that means that moving around a little bit. The other thing that you don't want to do, that you really want to avoid whenever you're doing this, and I really need 3 arms for this, is in your background. You want to keep that light off of your background, because what you're wanting to do is create as much color contrast and lighting contrast between the wire itself and the background. So if you turn this light around so it's doing a glancing blow on the background, you're going to get a much less contrasted scene than you would otherwise, and it's going to tend to be blown out. Now sometimes I will take tissue paper and I will put them on my wire. And I have this little glue stick right here, and all I'll do is just apply some of that to the edge of the tissue and attach that to the wire by folding it around the wire and letting the glue hold it in place. And then I've got several options that I can have whenever I'm doing that photograph against that piece. First off, I can have that light come through that piece, so I'm catching it in a after it's been diffused by that wire or by that tissue. The other thing I can do is I can photograph it so I'm just cutting on the edge of it, getting the highlighted area and the dark area, and as I'm rotating the camera, and that's what gives me a really good image. And so that's basically it from a setup point of view. I want it so that I am getting a glancing blow with that light. And I want to be very careful about where that light is positioned so that it's not hitting the background and tending to wash things out. Okay, the third thing that is very helpful whenever you're doing these photographs with ICM is trying to keep that camera in one plane of movement. In other words, not going like this, unless what you're definitely trying to do is get some in focus and out of focus areas. So I tend to try to keep it in one plane whenever I'm moving it around the wire so that it doesn't create a focusing issue on that wire. So that's about it. Let's pop over into the studio now, and I'll show you how I've adapted all of this to the studio. So here we are in the studio. Now I've got a little bit of glare in the back here just as a consequence of the lighting that I'm using for this video. I've covered the base with a piece of black cloth so I'm not getting any reflections off of that. And I've attached my wire with a little piece of tissue paper attached to it right here. Now my lamp is over here, and I've got a little bit of a concentrating cone attached permanently to that. I've taken the lamp apart, and I've got 2 nylon bolts in here that are holding that in place. And of course, the flexible arm allows me to position this wherever I want. Now I'm going to try to turn this lamp on. There we go, and it's still a little bit wider than I would like when I'm illuminating this wire. So I'm going to reattach this, bring this out a little bit, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but now I'm going to play with focusing the light so that it's coming through this piece of tissue paper and just glancing this piece of wire right here. And once I get that in position, then I'm going to take my camera, and this, by the way, is not the lens that I would normally use with this, but then I'm going to keep in one plane and start to rotate against this. And I'm going to do that with different angles. And again, if I see that I'm getting some glare with the light on the back, I'm going to readjust that, maybe pull this out just a little bit so that I'm eliminating that glare. And what I want to do is create as much color and light contrast between the front and the back as I can. And that's the way that I produce these images of wire and tissue paper. So I hope that's been a little bit of help to you, and I enjoy your emails that you're sending me, and please keep that up, and I hope you have great success in your wire and tissue photography. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch my video.